Story 9. The Great Escape on a Double Date. It was one of those evenings where everything seemed to align. Cool weather, an interesting new restaurant, and the excitement of meeting someone you'd been chatting with for a few days on Tinder. Sarah had been talking to a guy named Jason. He was charming, funny, and seemed like a good match. But after a few days of exchanging messages, they decided to take the plunge and meet in person. However, there was a twist. They were both nervous, so they agreed to make it a double date to ease the tension. Sarah brought along her best friend, Emily, and Jason brought his friend, Mark. The plan was simple. Dinner, drinks, and a relaxed conversation. Nothing extravagant, just a casual night out. But, as often happens with the best-laid plans, things quickly spiraled into something far less than ideal. The night started off well enough. The four of them met at the restaurant, a cozy little bistro that had been recommended by Emily. Everyone was polite, and there was a decent amount of small talk. Jason seemed like a nice guy, and Sarah was hopeful, maybe even a little excited. But as the conversation progressed, it became clear that there was something off. Mark, Jason's friend, was loud, too loud. He had a tendency to interrupt and speak over people, as though everything he had to say was of utmost importance. Sarah tried to brush it off at first, but his comments grew increasingly inappropriate. He asked Emily about her job in a way that was oddly invasive, making her visibly uncomfortable. Emily, who was usually the life of the party, became quiet, glancing at Sarah as if to signal that she was starting to feel trapped. Sarah tried to steer the conversation back to more neutral topics, but Mark wasn't having it. He continued with his barrage of questions, often making offhand comments about how women in the workplace were too sensitive, or overreacting when it came to certain things. Emily's eyes narrowed, and Sarah could tell that her friend was starting to feel agitated. Things took an even worse turn when the waiter arrived with their drinks. Mark, who had been nursing a beer all night, suddenly became very animated. He started telling a series of hilarious stories from his college days, each one worse than the last. One story in particular stuck with Sarah. He was recounting an event where he and his friends had played a cruel prank on a girl they'd been seeing. They'd convinced her to go on a romantic picnic, only to leave her stranded miles away from town with no ride home. Mark laughed hysterically as he told the story, but Sarah and Emily just stared in disbelief. That's when Sarah's gut started to tighten. Jason, who had been mostly quiet, didn't seem to be bothered by his friend's behavior at all. He laughed along with Mark, even though his smile seemed strained. It was as if Jason didn't want to challenge his friend, or worse, didn't even realize how uncomfortable the situation had become. It was too much. Emily kicked Sarah under the table, giving her a subtle but clear signal to get out. Without a word, Sarah stood up and smiled at the waiter. "Excuse me," she said. "We need to leave. It's been lovely, but I think we've had enough for tonight." Jason looked at her, slightly confused. But he didn't stop her. Mark, on the other hand, seemed oblivious to the tension. "What's the rush?" he asked, slurring his words. "You two should stick around. The night's young." Emily didn't hesitate. She stood up too, grabbing her purse. "No, we're done," she said firmly. As they walked out of the restaurant, Sarah's heart was racing. She couldn't believe how quickly the night had taken a turn. The whole situation had become so uncomfortable, so strange that it felt like a bad dream. They stepped into the cool night air, taking deep breaths as they walked down the street. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked Emily, who had been unusually quiet during the ordeal. Emily laughed, but it was a nervous, tight laugh. "I've never met anyone like that in my life. What the hell was that?" Sarah shrugged. "I don't know. I've been on bad dates before, but this was something else. I can't believe he thought that was okay." They both agreed to call it a night and go their separate ways, but Sarah couldn't shake the unease she felt. The evening had started with such promise, but had quickly devolved into an uncomfortable mess, all because of one person's complete disregard for boundaries and respect. The next day, Sarah sent a polite message to Jason, thanking him for the date but letting him know that she didn't feel the connection. Jason replied with a confused and slightly defensive message, apologizing for Mark's behavior, but it was too late. The damage had already been done. Sometimes you just have to trust your gut, and Sarah was thankful she had gotten out when she did. As for Emily, she swore off double dates for a while, and Sarah couldn't blame her. Some nights, escaping was the best option.
Thank you for watching. We're so glad you spent your time with us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It's a huge motivation for us to create more content. And make sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any new uploads. Thanks for your support. and see you in the next video.